All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming here. Welcome. This is a great audience. I'm really, really excited and really, really impressed. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone. Yeah? Thank you. This is the part where you say Happy Valentine's Day to me.
Happy Valentine's Day.
All right. So my name is Paul Gabbard. I'm the artistic director of an organization here in Gainesville called Y-Not Theater. It's a new nonprofit, and we've been working with the Santa Fe Shakespeare Festival in order to partner this and make this a year-long, awesome celebration. So that's what we've been doing. Before we jump to our panelists, I think it's appropriate to recognize the people that have been working with this. So we have a committee that has been working for about 4 or 5 months to plan and grow this exciting opportunity. This is a community panel that includes faculty and staff and community members. So those people that have been working on this, why don't we give them a hand, please? I want to recognize Audrey, Audrey Holt, who helped put this together. So thank you, Audrey. Okay. This year, we're working with a theme. The theme for this year is deception. So take a minute to kind of think about that, deception. That's kind of something that's happening a lot right now, I think, right? Maybe? Maybe there's a little deception going on? Okay. Now, let's introduce these wonderful people that are in front of me, all of which I consider my friends, all of which I happen to have worked with at some point, in some capacity in the recent future, some a little bit. It's been a while for some of us, but we've all worked together in some capacity. So I'm going to introduce them to you, and then we're just going to jump right in. So Mr. Sid Homan here is the author of 12 books and 5 collections of essays on Shakespeare and modern playwriting. He is an actor-director in the commercial and universal theater. Sid Homan was awarded the UF Teacher Scholar of the Year in 2013, 2014. Now that's the entire University of Florida. He was voted the Teacher Scholar of the Year out of all of the teachers there. I think that's pretty incredible. His prize-winning Beckett's Theater interpretation of performance emerged from a tour of Florida prisons where he was doing productions of Waiting for Godot. In A Fish in the Moonlight, he recounts stories of his youth in South Philly with his experience telling the children of the Shands Hospital Pediatric Bone Marrow Unit. He's also written the libretto for an opera, The Golem of Prague. Did I pronounce that right? Yeah. Yeah, The Golem of Prague, with a score by Paul Richards. At University of Florida, Sid teaches ENC 4333, which is Shakespeare, LIT 3041, which is a class called All Joking Aside, the Art and Craft of Comedy, LIT 3043, Modern Drama, Learning by Doing, and LIT 6047, An Evening of Shakespeare, which is a graduate seminar whose project is a 2-hour performance of Shakespeare's scenes. Mr. Sid Homan. Sarah Harkness-Sebastian serves on the dance faculty at Santa Fe College. She received her MFA degree at Florida State University School of Dance and earned her BA in Theater Studies with a minor in dance at Loyola Marymount University. Am I pronouncing that right?
Correct.
Loyola Marymount. After earning her undergraduate degree, Sarah worked with Sherry Lansing, former CEO of Paramount Pictures, and founded the Metropolis Dance Theater in LA, serving as the company's artistic director for 6 years, and produced many full-length evening works, including A Midsummer Night's Dream, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty. She has directed and choreographed such productions as A Chorus Line, Rocky Horror Picture Show, Twelfth Night, Macbeth, and South Pacific for the Theater and Dance Department at La Jolla Marymount. Loyola Marymount. I'm going to have to work on that one. She has served as assistant director and workshop coordinator for the Suzanne Farrell Workshop for Young Dancers and the FSU Summer Intensive for Young Dancers. She choreographed West Side Story, Sweet Charity, and A Chorus Line for the Fine Arts Department here at Santa Fe, and helps create multiple dance productions here at Santa Fe, as well as mentoring student choreographers for their annual concert Room to Dance. And I think there's some student choreographers or some student dancers out here in the audience today. So, Sarah Harkness-Sebastian. Mimi Carr has grown up in Gainesville and grew up in Weewa Pond near Micanopy. Has anyone ever been to Weewa Pond?
By the side of Weewa, not in it.
Okay, by the side.
My father was Caliban, what is that?
After graduating from the University of Florida, she went to work in Washington, D.C. In 1970, she went back to school and entered the actor training program at Wayne State University in Detroit. She interned at the Alley Theater in Houston, which is one of the first regional theaters in the country. And for the next 25 years, she was a member of the acting company at Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which is one of the most prominent Shakespeare festivals in the country. Seattle's Intimate Theater, the American Conservatory Theater, the Playmakers Repertory, North Carolina and Alabama Shakespeare Festival. She returned to Gainesville in the mid-1990s to assist her mother. While living in Gainesville, she created and directed a theater piece derived from several short stories of Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, as well as doing a cooking demonstration while performing. This performance in Gainesville in 1996 was a part of the 100th anniversary celebrating Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings' birth. She continued to perform selections of this piece. She also created a two-person readers' theater made up of letters from Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings and Maxwell Perkins. She retired from the Alachua County Sheriff's Office in 2018, where she worked with my father.
Yes.
Sheila Bishop was born and raised in Gainesville. Oh, I'm sorry.
We got distracted by your anecdote about, your dad.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sheila Bishop was born and raised in Gainesville. She received her BA in Humanities from New College in Sarasota, an MFA in Digital Media from the College of Fine Arts at the University of Florida, and an MLIS in Library Science from the University of Information at Florida State University. She has taught courses and workshops at the University of Florida, New College, New World School for the Arts, which is a real hotbed for theater right now, and Santa Fe College, as well as community education classes and workshops at the public library and high schools all over Alachua County. In 2012, Ms. Bishop has taught Since 2012, Ms. Bishop has taught a series of workshops at the Sequential Art Workshop, or SAW. Ms. Bishop has created, produced, publicized hundreds of experiences, including cabarets, plays, exhibitions, workshops, and educational events. Her work has been exhibited nationally and internationally, but she is most happy doing community-based art and theater projects here in this town. Once again, yes. A wonderful panel we have here. So I encourage you after we're done to meet them and talk to them and come shake their hands. They have lots of stories and lots of information to share. Okay, now we're going to jump into some questions. I'm going to start off with a few kind of guiding questions that we're going to go through, and then we're going to open it up to audience questions for the rest of the time. So please kind of be thinking, do you have any questions about Shakespeare and performance? What I like to say, things that make you go, I'm curious about that. Okay? Let's start with my dear friend Sid. What is the most challenging part of bringing the words of Shakespeare from the page to the stage? Where do you begin in your process of making the script or the words on the text performative?
Well, first of all, I hope you'll bear with my laryngitis. I will do the best I can. And I need to stand up.
Of course.
I'm used to this. I thought about this question, and let me just throw up 4 generalities. And then I want to give an example from Midsummer Night's Dream as a way of fleshing them out. The 4 things that occur to me are, first of all, you need to change Shakespeare's poetry into dialogue. The iambic pentameter is very seductive, but if it's too seductive, it'll sound too sing-songy. That time of year thou mayest to me behold when aught. No, you don't want to do that. You want to make it dialogue. He could write poetry when he needed to, right? When the Puritans closed down the theater, he wrote 137 sonnets with his left hand. But he wrote primarily for the theater. Number 2, as an actor, you complement this dialogue with the subtext you bring to the role. All those things your character feels is speaking inwardly. And I'll give an example of that. 3, and I think of my friend Mimi when I say this, particularly. At all times, though, it seems to me you're always a performer. The audience is never not unaware of that. That is, part of the meaning of the theater is the performance by the actor, whatever the theme may be of the play. And the fourth one is you need to examine the deep metaphoric basis of the plays. And this came to me from one of my students who once said to me, Sid, did people in Shakespeare's day speak that way? I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, do they speak with these metaphors and this complicated language? I said, no, I suppose they did not. He said, but it sounds real to me, Sid, at least on stage. And that led me to think, what's really happening with the dialogue? So let me give an example to flesh out these four. Here's Theseus's opening of Midsummer Night's Dream. Now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws on apace. 4 happy days bring in another moon, but oh, methinks how slow this old moon wanes. She lingers my desires, like to a stepdame or dowager, long withering out a young man's revenue. The first thing, you don't want to just hit the iambic pentameter. You don't want to say, now fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws. No, you can play with Shakespeare's iambic pentameter. How about if you start that opening one on a strong beat? Now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws on apace. By the way, Shakespeare, as he moves through his career, he begins playing with his own iambic pentameter until it gets so complicated you can hardly recognize it. I tell my actors, listen to a Billie Holiday record, because she takes the basic rhythm of the song and then makes it her own. Secondly, there's the subtext. All the things that the actor is feeling, that the character is feeling. Harold Pinter calls this subtext, by the way. He calls it the weasel under the whiskey cabinet. You go to a whiskey cabinet to take out a bottle. It's a purely mechanical thing. But when you do, you know there's a weasel underneath the cabinet, living underneath the cabinet. So the simple act of pulling out the bottle is not simple. So for example, on the example of Midsummer Night's Dream, why does he start with the word now? Now, fair Hippolyta. Well, look at that opening line. Now, I would give us a subtext for that, but a subtext is your choice. I want it now. Yeah. I have to wait 4 days to the damn consummation of the marriage. I went to Brazil to destroy you, but I found you attractive, so I condescended. He's a real male chauvinist pig. I decided to bring you back to Athens to make you my queen. Now. But he has courtiers all around him. When they did this in Shakespeare's day, all the members of the company were on stage. Now, let me cover it up. Fair Hippolyta. He doesn't say, you damn good-looking. No, fair Hippolyta. Our nuptial hour. Interesting. You know what he has his mind on.
Yeah.
But he uses our nuptial hour, and then he picks out a line from Romeo and Juliet, which was performed the same year. Our nuptial hour draws on apace. The metaphor there is, it's like a cart being driven by some slow horse, right? The third thing I suggested was that it's still performance. So if you're performing Theseus, look at the challenge you have. On one hand, you're a public person. You're the Duke of Athens. Everyone's interested in what you say. But at the same time, you're a man who can hardly wait 4 days. You've been taking a lot of cold showers so you fluctuate between those two, between now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws on apace. He does that back and forth. And notice, by the way, he changes from our nuptial hour. Did you see this? The slow moon lingers. My desires? What happened to her desires? Wow. If you're Hippolyta, what are you thinking? Finally, there's that language underneath it. The language which we don't really speak. I don't think Shakespeare's public really spoke it that much, but it seems right in Shakespeare. Theseus, unfortunately, has had a bad course in Poetry 101. Here comes this metaphor. Are you ready? She lingers like my desires. Here it comes. Like to a stepdame or dowager, an old unmarried aunt. Like to a stepdame or a dowager, long withering out a young man's revenue. What a picture. The young guy lives with his old maiden aunt. He's going to inherit her money when the old girl dies. But she goes on living and living and living. And the longer she lives, the more his money goes. What a metaphor. What a horrendously bad metaphor. Do we say that? Do we speak that way in real life? No, but that's what's really been at the basis of Theseus. So I leave you with these 4 items, and how am I on time?
We're going to need to wrap it up.
Okay, I will wrap it up like a good teacher. One, convert his poetry into dialogue. 2, find the subtext for the character, which will strengthen that support. 3, be aware that you're a performer. There's a pleasure in that. And 4, be aware of that fact that the language, Shakespeare's glorious language, is not real in a normal sense of the word, but is real in a sort of surreal sense. It's the language that all of us have within us, but that we very seldom voice. So that would be my answer to your question.
Thank you.
Excellent. Great. You guys see why he's one of the best teachers at the University of Florida? Okay, moving on. So, Sarah, dance and movement is a large part of making the words of Shakespeare performative. Where does dance fall in to this world? And how can you, as a choreographer and a director, approach this work and make it movement oriented?
Oh, you've set precedent. I have to say. I've been on my feet all day, but these chairs are scaring me, so I will go ahead and stand. I have found, well, first of all, I have a very lucky history in that I was surrounded by Shakespeare as a very young girl because my mother taught for 40 years, 7th and 8th grade English. And we lived in Chico, California, which is a 4-hour drive to Ashland, Oregon. So we went. I would go with her as a young girl when she was taking her students, and then she was my first Shakespearean teacher. We had to study Othello. I was terrified. Not terrified of Shakespeare. I'd been around that language, and she had all of her books at home. But I felt like there was an expectation that I would know it better than everyone else. I think I'd put that expectation on myself. So I grew up around it. And I think because I'm a very visual person, seeing it live from the start, and also being very lucky to grow up in a community in Chico, California, where they have Shakespeare in the Park, in Bidwell Park every summer, going with my parents and witnessing that. And I think more often than not, if not every time, whichever play I saw, the director had incorporated dance. Whether it was a court scene, or of course at the Shakespeare in the Park or in Ashland, Oregon, they have on the green, they have the court dances that you can witness and be a part of before you go into the play. So seeing that, and then also I think, just as there is a speaking rhythm that you find yourself into, there's a dancing rhythm within that movement. I then was very lucky when I went into college that even though my major was in theater, being a dance minor, it was a small school, Loyola Marymount, and theater and dance, kind of everyone did both. It was some schools it's very hard to do both. The schedules just don't work and both programs are too large, but I was lucky. And a lot of times the directors who were my theater professors would enlist me as a choreographer when they were working on a Shakespeare play, wanting to incorporate that for many reasons, wanting to include the dancers in the production in some way, and also for things like Midsummer Night's Dream, The Tempest. It doesn't even have to be fantastical. It can be a court scene, Romeo and Juliet. Macbeth, the director asked me, I was an alumna at that point, asked me to come back and choreograph something that couldn't be illustrated in words to show this power play that was lying underneath with Macduff and Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. I'm not in a theater, so I can say those names. I know. I know all the history there. And then in the times when I was fortunate enough to perform Shakespeare, lucky enough that the directors wanted me to incorporate that physicality. So playing Ariel and Tempest, they wanted me to draw on my comfortability in a physical way to make me more comfortable with the words I was saying. So I felt like the more I connected physically, the less nervous I was about finding the iambic pentameter. It was just kind of there, because if you let the rhythm of Shakespeare speak for itself and you go along for the ride, suddenly it doesn't sound like something from a different time that I can't wrap my brain around. It very much flowed with the way I wanted to move. I studied at the Oxford School of Drama, and the first 2 hours every morning, right there in Oxford, the little bus ride to Stratford-upon-Avon was movement class. So before we ever got into any language, it was unspoken improvisation movement class every morning with our theater professors. We did also have a dance teacher that came in, but this was purely, they would vocally dictate and guide us through the improvisation, but it was pure movement for 2 hours. And then becoming a choreographer, my path took me more in the dance direction, but I didn't want to lose all of that Shakespeare that I grew up with and really loved. And also, it's written for you. It is so easy to make a full-length ballet with Shakespeare as your backbone. It's all there. All you have to do is have fun dancing. Yeah, it's there for you. Not only are there established ballets like Midsummer Night's Dream and Romeo and Juliet, and an abridged The Dream, which focuses more on Titania and Oberon and Puck and their world and Bottom. But you can really have fun because those characters are so rich and those environments are so rich. And the dynamic of energies between the characters, both fantastical, mythical, and human, and otherworldly. So it just gives you so much to play with. And you don't have to do all the work creating a rhyme and reason for why it's laid out for you. And I found probably some of my most happy memories with the company were when we produced works inspired by or truly based upon Shakespeare. We had a benefit concert, and we every year had to have a theme. So some year it was a cinematic theme, another year looking at different classical repertoire and reinventing it in the current contemporary years in terms of modern dance. One year we went ahead and went with Shakespeare, and we titled it Dance in Our Round, as Titania says, let us dance in our round. It's all there for you, and it was so fun. I felt like the choreography poured out of me because whether it was Portia contemplating what has just been said to her by Brutus, and what she has to then negotiate within herself, or if it's something as right there on the page as Titania saying, let's dance, right? And we even had a lot of fun using the sonnets and dissecting those as an inner monologue and a start to middle to end of a journey through a physical roadmap. So for lack of a better word, it's just seemed so natural to me to incorporate movement into my experiences in Shakespeare. It's been the most delightful memories I've had, and the easiest time. Not that it's easy to put on a full-length production, but I didn't struggle with how to get to where I was going because it was all there for me.
Okay. Mimi. Hi, how you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Great, okay. For Shakespearean actors, the voice is a very important tool. A lot of times you're performing outside without much amplification. Where and how do you learn these vocal tools for acting outside in a Shakespearean stage? Things like meter, things like rhythm, projection, timbre, all of these types of tools that are instrumental in terms of performing Shakespeare. Where do these come from? Where did they come from for you? And where would you recommend people go?
Okay, thank you. Well, I feel like a lot of what I was going to say has all been beautifully covered by earlier, but I think just the first answer to your question is that a good BFA or MFA program with solid voice and movement training and working, even if it means going to visit a professor of English at the University of Florida, going to talk to them about what is going on in the play and what is going on in your character. The training is absolutely imperative. And I will say that I had none of that. And most of everything has been on-the-job training, which some people say, some old theater people say, that's the best training in the world. Experience, that's all you need. Well, no, not really. Not because so much of what I did, I got in my own way and harmed myself. Just an anecdote, if I might be anecdotal. I lost my voice once when I was very young, and I was working at a little theater in Missouri that a group of us from the University of Florida went to perform. And we were doing plays like Volpone, The Mistress of the Inn, The Country Wife. I mean, these incredibly complicated, didn't even know what we were talking about. These young people from the University of Florida in 1961 or 2. And I don't know what I did. I had no voice training at all, none. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know what a diaphragm was, I mean, I really had no idea. And probably everything was, and I hate to admit that I also smoked, as everybody did back in those days, which did me no good at all. But we had to do everything at this theater, just taking too long to say, but I mean, it was rotating rep that we were doing these 4 plays in rotating rep at this theater. We would have to strike the sets, we had to help with costume. It was the old story of, well, when I was young, we didn't even have an indoor bathroom. So that was part of your job, because that was also the stage door Johnny was for the people that came to see the play. So that was one of our jobs, was to handle an outdoor John that has been used too much. And I will move on from there. But I lost my voice, and there was nothing that could be done. There was no understudies. It was just inexorable that this play was opening, and my voice was gone. And I also managed to jar my half-assed learning of my lines. The play was, and maybe some of you all know it, it was Amadei by Eugene Ionesco. Now that sounds like real summer fare, doesn't it? And here I was, this sick, naive 20-year-old who grew up in Micanopy and from Gainesville. And what was this play about? It was something about this couple, and they had a son who is like dead in the next room, and he starts taking over the house. What is that about? We had no idea. And the people that came to see it, they kind of liked it. They thought it was sort of weird, but they liked it. But anyhow, losing my voice was so terrifying and was so embarrassing and heart-rending, because I really loved trying to be an actress. And losing that instrument really woke me up to finding ways, even though I had no training, finding ways either working with other actors, like when I was apprenticing at the Alley Theater, working with other actors that had gone through real good BFA programs. And I don't mean to slight the University of Florida at all. It was not, when I was starting in 61, it was in the speech department. There wasn't even really a separate theater department. 4 professors and all of was up in the 3rd floor of Tigert Hall, and it was just very different. And then when I went to graduate school, it was very much the experience is the best teacher there. We didn't do anything with Shakespeare. I don't know. We did other verse, which was very helpful. We did a lot of Greek theater, which was extremely helpful to work with. And we did, interestingly enough for me, and I've never read any of these plays, but a lot of things from Corneille and Racine, which was very, very affecting. The image of being a woman like Hippolyte, what's her name, Phaedra, who is so full of rage, and yet you're doing this play wearing a corset, and just even when I wasn't, just thinking of that control and how how that rage has to come from somewhere, and that power has to come without flopping around the stage, and I mean that in no insult at all. You know how actors like to flop on the stage. You jump and fall down on the floor, which of course cuts the meat out of the scene, having done that myself. But anyhow, so the vocal training was absolutely important for me. And in my last time at the Shakespeare Festival, we had a wonderful trainer come who had worked with Cicely Berry, who is the goddess of the voice.
Who just recently passed away.
Yes, who recently passed away. And then I'd like to recommend, if I'd known about this book, maybe I wouldn't have had so much struggle as an actress. This lady, Patsy Rodenberg, she's younger, she's more of sort of our generation, and she really tells it like it is and has wonderful exercises and about the voice. And to go on, again, so you've got this one thing about your body. And, they talk about it to be an actor and certainly to be a Shakespearean actor. You've got to be an athlete. You really have to be ready, like a dancer or a singer gets ready to dance or sing. An actor has to do the same thing, the relaxation, the opening up, the working on your face. God, the amount of treasure, the attention you carry in your face, the long vocal warm-ups, all of that is absolutely imperative. You got to be an athlete, because not only is the verse and the language heightened and somewhat different, it calls what this lady calls, the actor has to have a state of readiness, which she goes, it's an energy applicable to any character in Shakespeare. The readiness is a physical state of vivid alertness and presence that matches the heightened awareness and imagination of the Shakespearean character at the moment. Boy, if that isn't a good description of what any acting is, that it's more than what was I doing 5 seconds before coming on stage. Also, what do I want? But it is being there. And if something is different, then what causes you to become more ready? It is being definitely in the moment. The classic example of messing up Shakespeare is the wonderful line, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?" Or is, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?" Well, first thing you got to do, Mimi, is look up the word wherefore. It doesn't mean where. It means why are you Romeo? That's such a simple thing, but it's so many of us have made mistakes when we were in high school and read that. It was, "Oh, Romeo, Romeo, where are you, Romeo?" It's not the line. It's not what Shakespeare wrote, but it's such to me, a graphic example how you can screw up a whole moment by not knowing what wherefore meant, and not then putting the right. And then it sets up all the rest of that speech with Juliet's wonderful. She's romantic, but she's so eminently practical. "Oh, deny thy father, and forget thy name, and I'll no longer be a Capulet." She's very practical. While Romeo is, "Oh, what light around the window breaks." He's getting off on it. But she is like, "Oh, why don't you stop being a Capulet?" And I remember also years ago seeing a rather lackluster production of The Merchant of Venice. And it's funny how sometimes one line can stay with you. And this had to have been 40 years ago. And it's when Jessica has sold the ring that Shylock has given her, Jessica, the daughter. Takes the ring and uses it to buy a monkey. And the line is, "I would not have sold such ring," I'm paraphrasing, "for a wilderness of monkeys." Well, the actor said it, "I would not have parted with such a ring for a wilderness of monkeys. And boy, the line just lifted up off the stage of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. You know, it was like the whole Amazon River basin full of monkeys. I would not, that kind of simple thing. And then to go on, I don't want to quote so much from these ladies, but these books are fabulous. I think any actor, and maybe you all already are working with it. You know, maybe you all already know it. I'm sort of out of date a bit. But what she calls are the givens. And it's like what you were hearkening to, that it's all there. You know, people used to say that to me. Oh, he gives you everything. Well, I didn't understand that because I didn't know about iambic pentameter. And more importantly, I didn't know what Shakespeare was telling us when he breaks up the iambic pentameter, when he fools around with it. What is he telling about the character? I had the great...
That's status.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what's going on? Why does he go from prose to verse? What's happening there? And one of the speeches that I had the great honor of playing Lady Macbeth, and it was difficult for me because for a long time I was terribly intimidated by the role. I usually was a character actress, and I played small parts. You know, maybe third witch would have been my part, but if I was lucky, you know. But when her entrance scene, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, when she comes out reading the letter in prose, and then she does that thing that you were hearkening to by now. She goes, "Glams thou art, and cawdor, and shall be what thou art promised." You know, it starts very slow and measured, and shall be what thou art promised. You know, you begin to see her plotting. Her life is only Macbeth. That's all she has in her life. She is, you know, Ellen Terry said she did it all for love. Yeah, to me, she is non-existent without Macbeth. And the way that speech goes on, the givens of that speech is how many thoughts, and they count them out. There's 7 different thoughts that she has with 17 lines. And Rodenberg gave a wonderful, you know, I had to do it by fumbling around, by, you know, just trial and error and making lots of mistakes and probably still making lots of mistakes. But if I'd known about this exercise, that speech, "Glams thou art, and cawdor, and shall be what thou art promised. Yet I do fear that thou hast the milk of human kindness to catch, thou hast too much of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way," is to say that speech and change direction. You're in a room and change direction each time she has a different thought. Like you're saying, movement. And it's an exercise she has here that's very helpful, and I wish to hell I'd known it. You know, it would have wakened me up to the high energy. I sort of instinctively knew this about Lady Macbeth, but her high energy, that she's just, and boy, does it reach a pinnacle in the scene when when he's up there murdering the people with her lovely idea, you know, I'll do everything. All you have to do is go up there and kill them. I'll do everything else. You know, I mean, that's kind of the subtext there. And also, that which has made them drunk hath made me bold, has she tippled a bit? I mean, the lines show it. There's broken up lines, bam, boom, bam, like you would do, whispering. Did you do it? No, I didn't do it. Well, why didn't you do it? You know, that kind of energy. And then when he parts from her, there's nothing but the sleepwalking scene. I mean, she is bereft. She has nothing. But anyhow, I thank you for your attention. And I have here, for those of you all that don't know the book, this is a thing that Rodenberg wrote about the givens, her little checklist of things you should do with working with a part. Probably some of you all know it. But it goes also work, work, work. Work on your body, voice, speech. Work on your language skills. Work on the experience of language in all its forms, intellectually, emotionally, physically, and poetically. Tall order, but it's what it's about and what makes Shakespeare so thrilling and why he is so relevant to us today. Why, we're doing And wouldn't you love to see some of the productions, like the one with all women that did the Julius Caesar, set in a prison? It's thrilling for actresses, I would think. It's thrilling for them to play those parts. But anyhow, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to Sheila. Okay, Sheila. So our theme for this year that we've been discussing is this idea of deception. In your opinion, give us some ideas about deception in terms of the canon of Shakespeare, and what are some of the characters or the plays that kind of illustrate that the most?
Okay, so should I stand or sit? We have sort of a precedent of standing or sitting. What do y'all want?
You more august.
What do you
to
want,
sit.
What do y'all want? Stand. Okay.
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 Sorry about
So
that, folks.
I'm going to start by being a little deceptive.
Oh,
So,
good choice.
So when I was in high school, back in the 80s in Gainesville, I grew up working poor in Alachua County. My parents didn't go to college. I was the first person to get a college degree. PBS was like a window into culture. It was free, right? So on PBS in the 1980s, they would show Shakespeare in the Park, like filmed in New York City. And I have this vivid memory of A Midsummer's Night Dream done in like the late 80s. William Hurt plays Oberon. He was my least favorite actor in that production. A woman played Puck. She was incredible, right? The same time I'm watching the Shakespeare in the Park and Sunday in the Park with George, which is this amazing musical by Sondheim on PBS. On PBS, they're also showing the show called Left of Center, which shows Laurie Anderson, amazing experimental performer and musician, right, is bringing in experimental art and performance art, right? So that was sort of fundamental to me. All right, 1990, I graduated high school. The National Endowment for the Arts is gutted because of artists doing artwork like Piss Christ. So I knew that I wanted to do theater and acting, but I knew I wanted to do experimental stuff. But I also knew there would be no funding. So I didn't do a traditional theater trajectory. So when I get back to deception, which I will in a moment, you have to understand that I don't come out of the traditional theater. I did experimental performance art, video art, sometimes some traditional theater, but mainly freakiness. So that's where I'm coming from. And I have definitely learned by doing, and sometimes wish I had had the chops from the more traditional training. I thought about talking about The Tempest, because Prospero is essentially a puppet master, and he's controlling everyone. And one of my favorite film adaptations of The Tempest is Prospero Books by Peter Greenaway. It's a very slow-moving, absolutely gorgeous movie. If you love visual art and dance and freakiness, I highly recommend it. But there's this thing where all the voices are blended. So Prospero is basically the voice for everyone until it begins to break apart and he's ready to break his staff, right? So I was going to talk about Prospero's books and The Tempest. I eventually want to do an adaptation called Hurricane about climate change in Florida, but that's another story. But what I want to talk about is deception and the taming of the shrew, right? And I'm related a little bit to A Midsummer's Night Dream. So how many of you are familiar with Taming of the Shrew, right? So The Taming of the Shrew, it's a comedy, right? It's a romance, right? But not. And one of the things I think that's important is, we don't do Shakespeare like no theater. So in Japan, there's a traditional theater form called no theater. It's been done for hundreds of years. And masks have been handed down for like 400 years. And it's done very similar to how it was done, like certain skills are passed down. There isn't this question of adaptation and interpretation. I think that's a beautiful way to treat a traditional form. But we as a culture don't tend to do that with Shakespeare. We mess with it, right? So The Taming of the Shrew is one of those plays where I think we have to mess with it if we put it on stage at this point, because it is so painful when you look carefully at it. So I have not rehearsed these, I'm going to read some things. So the scenes in which Kate has gone home with Petruchio, he begins to basically violate her domestically. It's domestic violence when you look carefully. He's fooling her, right? So she's about to eat some meat. The meat was well if you were so contented, this is what Kate says. Petruchio responds, I tell thee, Kate, 'twas burnt and dried away, right? So everything that she wants to believe is true, he will deny, right? And the reason that he's doing this is, as he says in a monologue towards the end of scene 1 in Act 4, she eat no meat today, nor none shall eat. Last night she slept not, nor tonight she shall not. As with the meat, some undeserved fault I'll find about the making of the bed, and here I'll fling the pillow, there the bolster. Skipping ahead. That all is done in reverent care of her. This is a way to kill a wife with kindness, right? I'm shaking, right? Because it's a comedy, and yet if we listen to it now, it is a tragedy, right? So here's this moment in which he's manipulating her. He's going to deny her sleep, deny her eating. So he's basically torturing her. They're on the road going back to her father's house. An old guy comes up. Is it where the old guy? No, let's skip ahead. I'll come back to that. So they're on the road in scene 5, Act 4. Petruchio says, good Lord, how bright and goodly shines the moon. Kate says, the moon? The sun, it is not moonlight now. Petruchio, I say it is the moon that shines so bright. Kate responds, I know it is the sun that shines so bright. Petruchio, now by my mother's son, and that's myself, it shall be moon or star or what I list. So she gets convinced by the servants that she should just go along with it, right? And the reason why this is so important is by the end, an old dude is walking up on them, and he greets her. Petruchio greets the guy, says, fair, lovely maid, once more good day to thee. Sweet Kate, embrace her for her beauty's sake. So, and Kate responds, young budding virgin, fair and fresh and sweet, whither away and where is thy abode? And then Petruchio basically says, well, no, you're crazy, it's an old guy. And so then she goes, pardon, old father, my mistaking eyes that have been so bedazzled with the sun, that everything I look on seemeth green. She has to accept the deception. She has to accept the abuse. It becomes her new reality. And while at the time it was funny, and in productions it ends up being funny, I think it's one of the most tragic moments in Shakespeare, for me personally, because I love Kate. And here's why I love Kate. Because she wants the truth. Why, sir, I trust I may have leave to speak, and speak I will. I am no child, no babe. Your betters have endured me, say my mind. And if you cannot, best you stop your ears. My tongue will tell the anger of my heart, or else my heart, concealing it, will break. And rather than it shall, I will be free, even to the uttermost, as I please in words. Now that's said before the scene where she has to accept his lies. But that moment is, to me, one of the most beautiful moments in Shakespeare, because she's saying, you will hear my anger. And I think about where we are today, and I think about the Supreme Court nomination process last summer, and I think about the Virginia governor or lieutenant governor issues, and why we don't believe people when they say, right? And so I ask you to look critically at Shakespeare and to think about how it's both beautiful and horrible, because it shows what's beautiful and horrible, not only about Shakespeare's time, but about our own time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, okay. We have about 10 minutes left, which isn't a lot of time, so we're gonna have to condense these answers pretty quickly. But maybe we'll take 2 or 3 maybe kind of pressing questions. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir. Please stand. Tell us your name.
My name is Kurt.
Okay.
I have a quick comment. There was an all-female production of Titus.
Yeah?
Yes, it was amazing.
Oh,
Really
boy.
astounding to see something that
Yeah.
overwhelming for my all-female.
Titus syndrome,
And I want to ask you about dance. I was watching some dance performance recently, and it had this fight scene, and it was like, I mean, beyond him, I was like, I'm doing this over here, the person across the stage. Have you ever incorporated full-on stage combat into your dance?
Contact improv. It's a lost art, but I love it. No, I have actually found that that's what I love about teaching modern dance, is that and I have a few students who just came from modern class with me, in which this week we're working on falling and recovering. So, in which you can discover just what the capacity is for not just physical contact with someone else, but the body parts that you can actually bear weight on and take and absorb shock with. And I have found that when choreographing a full length or even a one act or one scene based on Shakespeare's work, it really allows me to stretch and push how I can incorporate some of the fight choreography, because I don't want to say I'm not limited by the words, because I don't feel limited by the words, but there isn't a certain amount of phrasing that has to make sure that we get to. We can explore the gist of what that power play is or what that struggle is, and spend time exploring that in movement. So I feel like using movement really allows me to look at that physical struggle and take risk and find ways to have that impact and that physical contact. It still requires breath control, but it's you're able to dive deeper into what that physical tension is by exploring and experimenting with movement. I've just come from a day of dance where I don't have to talk. Because when Paul asked me to do this, I said, you know that I chose dance as a career.
That's good.
So if I could interpret it for you right now, but I hope that answers your question.
No, that's good. That's a great answer. Good. Okay, any other questions? We'll take two.
One on the way back.
One on the way back. Yes.
Went against what I was thinking of, and yes, we were talking about Taming the Shrew, and I was once doing a production of Taming the Shrew, and I had a marvelous actress playing Kate, and my concept of that play was that Kate and Petruchio have been meant for each other forever, and she's been waiting for him, he's been waiting for her, and at the end of the play, when she gives that speech, which sounds like the speech of an unliberated woman, women, place your handle, know your husband's foot, and your beauty is to please your man. I myself had taken that, and I may have been forcing my own liberal views on it, I had taken that as not subservience, but a sense of sacrifice to the other. And I wanted to emphasize that Kate was not demeaning herself, just the opposite of what you're saying, but rather announcing, like Portia, when she gives herself to Bassanio, she would give up herself out of love. Anyway, my actress, we talked about that. She decided she would entertain it. And then came the first night of rehearsal of that speech. And she turned to me and said, "Sid, I can't do that." I said, "Why, Janet?" And she said, "Well, she'd worked with battered women." And she said that speech reminded her of the defensive posture that battered women take. If only I had been kinder to him or gotten his meal on time, he wouldn't have hurt me. And she said, "What are you going to do about this situation?" And I said, Shakespeare's wide enough to contain a lot. And I said, let's go with the speech that way. And I think the nice product of that was, it wasn't because of anything I did, but what she did, was for the most part, my romantic interpretation held. These were two massive creatures, witty, waiting for each other, and though they fought, they loved to fight. But at the end, the play suddenly turned dark with that speech. And I remember, I always like to stand outside the theater when the audience comes out, and I sort of hide in the bushes so I can listen to what they're saying. And I heard this guy come out and say, gee, I thought I understood that play, but what the hell happened at the end there? That was, my principle with my actors is if they come up with something which is as good as I have, it doesn't have to be better. I always go with my actor, so that the actor then owns that part of the play. My friend John Anderson, by the way, do I have a second?
Yeah.
He was directing the production of Now That We're Taking the Show in Nigeria during one of the most repressive times in that country's government. And he was told by the government authorities that play was to show the superiority of men and how women should find their place. He had this marvelous actress playing Kate, and the play went as scheduled up until that final speech. All the government officials were sitting in the front row, John right in the middle of them. And the actress got up to deliver the speech. She suddenly started to improv. She said, before I deliver the final speech, I want all men in the 16. I want all men on the stage to get down on their hands and knees and acknowledge the equality of women.
Wait!
And the actors look out at John, and John, I will not continue until they do that.
Good for her.
And John goes, and they all go down. And then she played him for a little while. No, you don't look humble enough. No, I said, head, little look. And once they were all like that, then she delivered the speech. Of course, it came out wonderfully
Ironic. Another thing Shakespeare did a lot of.
Go ahead, Minnie.
Well, I don't know
This
if
is
this
our last comment.
applicable, but one of the things I think that, first of all, I want to ask you all, do you think Taming of the Shrew is still something that can be done well in our day today? Do you think, I'm just asking that question. Yeah, what would you say? I mean, I hear the production that was done, was at the Royal Shakespeare that was fairly recent, where Petruchio was played by a woman. And he's played like as this, real shit kicker guy. He's got a truck, and he's the first thing he is doing. And I can't remember, it's that actress what is her name? The tall McTeer. I think it was Janet McTeer played Petruchio, and he's urinating against a wall. I mean, this is making him out as something other than this elegant man I've come to rise up wealthily in Padua, and apparently it was quite successul, but they made a lot of, like having a woman playing Petruchio. That's, I don't know. I have a problem, I think, and I don't want to sound like fustian that we all have to be wearing farthingales and those things, but I think it's dangerous to modernize the Shakespeare unless you've really thought it out. We had a ghastly experience at the Shakespeare Festival when I was there, where they did, at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, they did a production of the taming of, oh God, senior moment, that's why I don't act anymore.
Was it the?
What's her name?
It wasn't the Romeo and Juliet.
Shylock. What is that?
Oh.
Merchant of Venice.
Merchant of Venice. And the wonderful director just saw Shylock as her father. This man, kind of like Willy Loman, he'd go to work, he'd have his suitcase, his suit, wearing his talus. You could see underneath his suit. and it was modern dress. And he wore a yarmulke, and his, and it was because she just saw Shylock as her father, this man that had been mistreated all his life. Well, Jewish people along that, it's like every synagogue on the West Coast rose up in a rage. They thought it was anti-Semitic. They called the actress a self-hating Jew, the director a self-hating Jew. They were offended that somehow to make this play post-Holocaust, modern dress, after the Holocaust, was offensive. And of course, we Gentiles, well, we didn't know. It was quite a shock. People were profoundly offended by it and wanted the play to be changed or stopped, which they wouldn't do. But there, again, it was a great idea to have Shylock be like Willy Loman, going off with his suitcase off to sell, And it just didn't work. It offended people. And of course, most of us were completely ignorant and completely blindsided the theater. And to call this wonderful director a self-hating Jew was so, well, anyhow, apropos of nothing.
Well, thanks for sharing. That's good. It's a great story about how you have to be real careful.
Yeah, think it out. Really have it thought out.
Okay, we're just about out of time. Usually what I like to do at the end is I like to give our panelists a chance to kind of plug up-and-coming things that are coming up. Because, these are artists, these are working artists, and they all have projects that they're up-and-coming. So and all of them, I think, have stuff that they're working on or in development. So if you guys have any projects that are
A couple things. So we have our annual spring repertory concert, Elements of Style, here at the San Diego Fine Arts Hall. And we also have a guest company in residence for that concert, the New York Dance Project. So we have works by faculty and guest artists, danced by our dancers, as well as works by the director of New York Dance Project and their guest artists. And there'll be a collaborative piece in which the director of New York Dance Project will be working with some of the Santa Fe students and choreographing a piece with them and the company dancers. That is March 22nd and 23rd here on campus, free for faculty, staff, and students. We also have Grand Hotel, our annual musical production, which opens the Thursday and Friday before Memorial Day weekend, and then the following weekend, which we've just started. Rehearsal process for that, a few people in the audience. And then we are taking some of the dance students to the annual American College Dance Association Southeast Conference this year in Kennesaw State University, the weekend after Elements of Style, which we will be presenting 3 works, one choreographed by a guest artist, one choreographed by students, and one choreographed by myself, as well as taking classes every day, faculty included, and teaching.
You got anything coming up?
So I'm hoping, Paul and I are going to meet during spring break. I'm hoping to workshop a play that I'm working on. It is kind of a weird experimental choral piece that brings the witches from Macbeth, social media, goth, sex, and sexism, both of those things, both positive and negative, all together into a strange choral experimental performance piece. I actually bring Shakespeare into my work a lot. I did a piece years ago called Kate Will Not Kiss You, which is a reinterpretation of the passages I find so problematic. So if folks are interested in experimental theater that uses sort of viewpoint style workshop processes as well as playfulness, you can find me in the Santa Fe directory. At some point I may do a call for people willing to workshop. So do y'all know what workshopping is? So it ain't ready to go on stage yet. I need people to help me figure out what is working and not working with the script. That's where I'm at with my project. So. And I'm working on the Shakespeare Festival. But that's going to be February 14th, 2020. So we're a little bit, that's like a ways away.
Sid, what do you got coming up?
I would like to invite you to a show called An Evening with William Shakespeare with a Touch of Tom Stoppard. I'm doing it with a 10-person acting company at the university. It's free. It's going to be on Thursday, April 18th at 7:30 p.m. In Usler Hall, the and study program. And it'll be a lot of the things that we talked about, including Kate's final speech, which I, by the way, have men and women deliver it together. And then two scenes from Stoppart's Rosencrantz Against the Dead, because of course it's a commentary. It's free. We'd love you to come.
Thank you.
Mimi, you got anything coming up?
Well, I am, as they used to say, at leisure. If you need an old actress to play something,
We'll find you
I'm at leisure.
something.
But I have been doing a few of the readings from Marjorie Canaan Rawlings for the Elder Hostel, no, they're not called Elder Hostel, the Rhodes Scholars here in Gainesville. That's what I've been doing.
Okay. All right, and that's about the. And also, if you're interested in more of the Why Not Theater stuff, what Why Not Theater is up to, over there's a clipboard with a kind of you put your name and information there, and also my business card if you want to learn more about who this Why Not Theater people are and what they're doing and all that kind of stuff. There's information over there about us, and a lot of these people have worked with me before and this organization.
Good.
Yeah, okay. So we are just a little over time. But if you want to hang out and ask me questions, or hang out and ask some of these people questions, I know Sarah has to work in person.
It's all right. It got canceled.
Oh, okay. Sure. Hang out, talk. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.